Welcome to Not Your Typical Church Ladies, faith conversations for your real life. I'm Vicky, and each week I am joined with my fellow workers in the vineyard, Anne and Karen, to break open the Sunday scriptures and talk about life and faith and everything in between. Join your Not Typical Church Ladies on this journey each week. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Not Your Typical Church Ladies. We are in the third week of Advent, and I am joined, as always, with Anne and Karen to dive into our scriptures and just talks about life and getting ready for Christmas like we all are right now. So welcome, guys.
Hey.
Hey.
So
third week in Advent, it's Joy Week. The pink candle.
All I can think of is the Ren and Stimpy. Happy, happy, joy, joy.
You're dating yourself, but I'm with you, friend.
Okay, so looking over our scriptures for this week, I just feel like I've been drawn to the Gospels in general a lot lately, but did anything stand out in any of the readings to you two?
For me, well, when I was reading over everything, there was a reflection I was reading about the scripture passages, and it really caught my attention about the gospel. And it says, Jesus has harvested the blind who see again, the lame who now dance, the lepers who can kiss their loved ones, the deaf who are startled by a bird song, and the dead who are raised. And it's like a culmination of everything that Jesus has done for the outcast. And it just like those words, okay, if we just close our eyes and then open them and be like, okay, you're kind of startled by the brightness and not being able to hear anything. And then all of a sudden being able to hear. And it's just like, how awesome is that transformation that these folks had? And then it kind of got me thinking about more of like, I'm always looking for this like big thing or this big conversion or this big transformation in my life or this big prayer answered. And I don't get it, but I miss all the small things that are happening. And so that just kind of caught me a little bit to like pay attention to the little things, the little prayers that God answers, or, the great love of my family, that we're all healthy and happy and that we have family to celebrate with. And so maybe that one big thing isn't for me yet. It will be, but like we talked about one of those last weeks, God's plan is bigger than our plan. So if I'm always looking for the big things, I'm going to miss all the little things in my life, that in ways that Jesus can transform me and others.
I think it's cool too that in this week where we're lighting the pink candle and we're talking about rejoicing. Our readings they're about hope. They're about being hopeful, but they're about being hopeful in like patiently, like in the face of like God's plan that is working in its own time, which is not our time. And I think both in the first and second readings this week, you kind of see that. Like, I just want to talk about how beautiful that first reading is. It's one of my favorites, just that image, like the desert will bloom. And, yeah, we all have our desert moments. We think about deserts more in terms of Lent, I think, but here we're in Advent and we're having a desert. And that reading always makes me remember many years ago, before I had kids, we had a youth ministers conference in Las Vegas, which was an interesting place to have a youth ministers conference, but it was, in the desert. And that was the theme of the concert, was the desert will bloom. And it was, that whole weekend was just, it was such a necessary time for me to spend with colleagues and with mentors and with, just getting some inspiration and some support for the ministry. And I needed it, it's just like water for the thirsty. And have you guys ever been to a place that's a desert, like Las Vegas, or even like, I think like parts of Colorado I've been to have kind of felt like that, but like,
unfortunately.
Yeah. And like my dad lives in New Mexico, so we go down there and we see, it's just when we're so used to like green. I mean, we get snow and all that too, but like we have so much water here. And we have so much growth here that to be in a place where it's all brown, it's all dry, and like your body gets, like your mouth gets dry and your eyes get dry and you need to drink a lot more water, and it's just different. And you can kind of have that experience, that physical experience of what the spiritual meaning is, like that we're thirsty for God. But there is growth. Like God will provide for our thirst, and God will provide the growth in his time.
And when you said it was great to be among colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking how great it reminded me, like we're not on this journey alone. We have our faith communities that we can rely on and use for support. And so we're never isolated from extending Christ to others or to receive it. I know how hard it is sometimes to ask for help, but the fact that our communities are so welcoming to everybody, and that we do have that safe place on our weekend masses to be able to come together and share in our sorrows and in our joys, is such a great witness that not all the other faiths have that central community, I would say. So
well, I think that's so true too. I mean, one of the things that struck me interestingly in the gospel is the idea, right, that John sent his followers, his community essentially, to go see Jesus and like report back to him, because he couldn't move from where he was clearly. But that idea that, he points his followers to who is the most important, the person he's been preparing the way for. And that also, though, Jesus says, this is still your community. Like, go back, tell John this, tell him everything you've seen, and he will then tell you what to do next and nurture you. Like that idea of like that small community that was listening and being guided by John and then ultimately by Jesus to do what was next for them. And when you're in the desert sometimes, right, it's those people who help you. I think like, we're all in a little bit in the desert right now. We're like very close to Christmas. It's a little bit stressful. There's always lots of things, it's that community that you hub around that truly can be the people to help you in those moments where you don't feel God or you are like in a desert state, to have hope, find joy still, and be able to move ahead.
yeah.
I'm so intrigued too with that. You talk about community, like that community, the relationship between John and Jesus, which we don't know a ton about. But this particular gospel passage is so interesting because like, okay, so we know they're like cousins or relatives of a kind, but we also know that Jesus, the Holy Family was in Egypt for most of his growing up years. So John and Jesus, they seem to know each other, but we don't really have an idea of like what if they knew each other in childhood or in adolescence or only we don't know. But it's clear from the reading today that they love each other and that they support each other in that way. And even though like John has been championing Jesus, he's been pointing the way to him, he's been preparing the way, and he's in prison for it. He still sends this question, like, are you the one? So it's like he knows who Jesus is and he believes in him, but he also doesn't fully know yet. And I'm just really intrigued by the idea that his understanding of who Jesus was unfolding still, even with this person who had known Jesus, like from before his public ministry.
Well, even so, like the fact that John questioned it, I think relates to us, because aren't there times that we're all in, right? We believe, but there are times that things happen and we're like, I'm not sure. And so I think that's what makes, for me, shows John's humanity. And even though he knows who Jesus is, he's stuck in prison. That's his desert. And he's like, dude, am I stuck in prison because this guy is really this guy? Or am I stuck in prison because I just got,
The wrong people.
blindsided or something,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So, just that notion of we'll have times that we're struggling, even though like we know in our heart that it is true, society and our mind just kind of seep into that questioning and trying to find our way back. So I don't know how I would be if I was in prison. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, and just the idea too that there's always deeper to go,
Yeah. Yeah.
And also just how cool that, like, I mean, you hear Jesus kind of cheerleading for John at the end of this passage too, so it's just, you just feel like they have each other's backs, and we all need to do that for each other as we walk this journey of trying to live in faith and figure out what it all means. None of us have all the answers. We walk in faith, and we walk in joyful hope. But we're on the path still.
For sure.
Always.
Yeah, and I think too, we'll have, one of the questions we kind of like had for one of our focuses is like, where are your desert periods in life right now? Or what are the things you're hoping to bloom? And that's the other part of it, right? Like life isn't all going to be perfect all the time. So we could be really strong in our faith, but then have these things happening in life or in our families or just around us in other avenues that we need to, have that support and that love and our desert period for us, even if another area of our life is going great at that point. It's just part of living, is that constant kind of struggle and constant trying to just move ahead on the path.
Now this might be a little personal, so I don't know if you want to answer this or include this, but have you ever been in a desert when one of your family members has been blooming or blossoming, or vice versa? I'm just thinking, with our society and jobs and, like just relationships where one person is thriving and the other one is just like feeling so desolate. That could be a desert in of itself, is these struggling periods. So I don't know, I just thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to include that or not, but anyway.
No, that's a really good point, because our personal seasons may or may not line up with the seasons of those we're in most close relationship with, and they may or may not line up with where the church is even.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Advent, we talk about being a time of preparation and a time of growing. And our readings today are about growth, I think, those first and second readings, but like, you got to take it in your own, you got to meet God where you're at, right? You can't do otherwise. So
yeah, I mean, most of us think of Christmas as a happy, joyous time, but we don't think about the people who don't have anybody to celebrate Christmas with. That might be a lonely time for them, or somebody who just died within this year, and this is the first Christmas without them, and here everyone around them is celebrating and joyous, and they are just stuck. Yeah, it's not always joyous for everybody.
Yeah. So maybe the call this week is to, stand with hope and patience, and to pray that God will grow in your life the things that, are taking root and seeding, even if you may not be able to feel them or see them, to see the fruits yet, to trust that the growth is happening even underground.
I like that analogy.
Those are some of our thoughts around the readings and this, this season of Advent. As we're getting closer and closer to Christmas, we're almost there. We're in the home stretch kind of this season, but also, remembering that we're all growing at different speeds in different ways. And that, I think the scriptures really reinforce that for us, that idea that we're all on this journey and on this path, not just to Christmas, but just in life in general, all of us. So we hope that you loved our kind of comments. Does anyone have any final things for the good of our viewers, listeners?
Good.
Yeah, I'm good. I think we covered a lot more than what I anticipated we covered. So that usually happens.
Enjoy your third week of Advent, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. We'll see you again soon. On behalf of Anne, Karen, and myself, thank you again for listening to this episode of Faith Conversations for Your Real Life. Please make sure to subscribe to wherever you're listening or watching this episode. You can find the readings linked in the description box below, and we can't wait to see you again next time on Faith Conversations for Your Real Life with your favorite not so typical church ladies.